It is 3 p.m. now, so I just want to say welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our annual Happy Discovery Korea event for overseas adoptees. For many years, Dongwha Culture Foundation has organized events to share traditional Korean culture with adoptees, families, and communities. Dongwha Cultural Foundation has partnered with many institutions and organizations to promote intercultural exchange. From musical instruments and traditional Korean dance programs to tea ceremonies at Harvard University Workshop Series beginning in 2013, Dongwha Cultural Foundation has strived to introduce traditional and contemporary Korean culture to Korean adoptees in America. So founded in 2003, Dongwha Cultural Foundation is a nonprofit organization that strives to promote Korean and East Asian cultures within American society. We have provided educational programs of traditional Korean music, calligraphy, dance, food, and language, and many different outreach programs with different schools, museums, organizations, and communities. Through a collaborative exchange of Eastern and Western cultures, we are aspiring to raise deeper awareness and understanding of the diverse cultural makeup of our modern day society. Our Happy Discovery Korea event was organized in partnership with Sylvia Wald and Po Kim Gallery. The Sylvia Wald and Po Kim Gallery is a nonprofit museum that promotes cultural harmony through the arts by sponsoring and hosting art exhibitions and other artistic events of national and international contemporary artists. We would like to thank our sponsors, the Consulate General of the Republic of Korea in New York, and the Korean Adoption Services helping to bring this program to you. So today, our program will be featuring a Korean tea ceremony with Dr. Young Mi-ha. Hello. Adjunct professor of New York University, and a gallery tour of Paper Contemplation, our current exhibition of contemporary Korean Hanji paper artists with educator and author Dr. Robert C. Morgan and Dr. Soo-jung Hyun, adjunct professor at Montclair State University. So now I would like to introduce you to Dr. Young Mi-ha, who will be hosting the Korean traditional tea ceremony. Dr. Ha is an educator, composer, and teacher of musical theory and composition at New York University. She served as the director of Dongwha Culture Foundation for many years in the past and continues to collaborate with Dongwha Culture Foundation to promote Korean culture and arts. She has played a key role in developing our educational programs, and we are very pleased to have her back today as our instructor. So welcome, thank you.
Good afternoon, my name is Young Mi-ha. It is my pleasure to meet you, and I hope everyone is doing well despite of the corona, what is going on. Everyone is having really hardship, I know, but I'm so glad to see you guys all today. I want to thank Dongwha Cultural Foundation for inviting me to this very special event. As I'm not an expert on green tea, I am here today to share some knowledges and experience that I learned from my own dad for past years. Personally, tea is a love and understanding for me. I don't know what it means to you, so let's discover what tea means to you today through the journey of the Korean green tea. So as you're learning the different culture now, so there is a little bit of a learning process that we have to go through. We need to do a little bit of a study, and then I'll guide you how to make a cup of a tea. So I'm going to share the PowerPoint with you. May I get a keyboard, please? So I made a little bit of a PowerPoint presentation for you to understand what is it, how we harvest the tea leaves, and how to make it teas. So what is tea? So the tea is the second most commonly drinking liquid on earth after water. So the water is number one, and second one is tea, and we beat the coffee. Coffee comes on the third. So tea is a beverage made from the processed leaf of a tea tree. Did you know that all the teas, whether it's green, white, red, yellow, or the black in their colors, and no matter where it comes from, it is made of the same evergreen tree. So the different, the names, different colors of the tea, it all comes from the one green evergreen tree. So it depends on how to process, you get the different colors. So the screen that I'm sharing on in your left column, you have a non-fermented, which is just lightly roasted. You have a green tea and the very light of the white tea. Whereas on your right column, you have a semi-fermented, also called as the yellow tea, jasmine tea, or the Chinese oolong tea, which is a medium volume. And the last one is a fully fermented. It's really dark. So most of the black teas, red teas from Africa, and pu'ol, which is a really dark, but also it's a post-fermented one. So this is the tea tree, as you can see, and you have the seeds bearing from the tea tree. Tea tree is very unique. It blossoms the flowers, also it bears the seeds. So the color of a tea tree flower is a white color. On your right side, that's the seed, and left side is the tree. And this is the flower. And sometimes you can make the green tea also have one leaf of your flowers to flow it, to have a visual sense, also your oral, whereas you can taste some of those flowers. And let's go into the history of a Korean tea. So drinking of a tea in Korea seems to have been introduced in the 6th or the 7th century, probably by Buddhist monks returning from China, where the many scholars of Buddhism attracted some of the Korea's finest scholars and monks. So the religion and the tea, it cannot be really separated in the Korean history. So the PowerPoint that you are looking at it is you have 3 wells. They have 3 steps. The very first one is the most precious one. So we want to make the tea and respect your Buddha. And the second one is you're making the rice. And the third one is the rest of the household or the cleaning the water that you can use it. So we value the quality of the water, also spiritually, the very first one, the most precious one that you want to use it to make the cup of a tea. And this is the photos from the temple that I visited. And in the pottery, the tea culture cannot be really separated from the pottery. So this is from the Silla dynasty. And in Joseon dynasty, you do have a separate tea house and with a nice view. So what you have seen here is the lotus pond. So just imagine yourself like sitting in the really far east side in that house and having this tea in the summer. I think that would be really great. So we really hope that we can have that in very soon. And this is the modern tea room. So it can be very organized, but you could have just a collection of things that you like. So it could be really casual too. So green tea, there are the levels, the classifications that you have. So according to the price too. So you have a very high price of the teas. Also, you have a very affordable teas. So let's see what makes it so high price and what makes it very affordable price. The best time of picking the tea leaves, it starts from the mid-spring, which is about the April 20th, and it goes all the way to the end of the May. In Korea, you have 3 popular places. If you ever have a chance to visit Korea, I really recommend you to visit one of these places. So the one on your left top is Hadong, which is a part of a Jiri mountain. So since it's a part of a mountain, you have a lot of wild tea trees along with the plantations. On your right side top, you have a Bosong. That's a little bit southern side of the Korea. So you have more of a plantation. It's not really naturally based on the wild trees, but they start to make a plantation. And the very bottom one is a Jeju Island. It's a Hawaii for us here. So you have a very tropical weather, so it's a really perfect place to have a tea plantation. So the shape of Korean's map is like the rabbit, all the way to the bottom. If you can see, sorry, I cannot really pinpoint it at it, but you can see the green colored Hadong, which is located further southern part. It has the wild tree along with the plantation, and a little bit southern, further southern from the Chiri Mountain, which you have a Posong. That's also very well-known tea plantation. And to the left side, bottom part, that's the Jeju Island. You have a very large plantation. Also, they have a very good tea museum that I really recommend you to go. So meaning that, so when you want to buy the teas, I recommend you to see where it is coming from. So I brought several teas with me. These are the ones that I really like it. I'm not promoting any of these brand names, but most of them are coming from either Posong or the Hadong or the Jeju Island. So you can choose. Tea set. So let's move on to the tea sets. So you could have a tea set for one person, or you can have a tea set for 2 people, or the 3 people, or as many as people that you wish. So let's start with the very first one. On the top is the for 1. Also at the bottom is 1. So it's just a different material. But I have my favorite one. So I don't know whether you can see it clearly. So this is the tea set for 1 that they travel with me every time that I go to some place. So you have a simple small cup, and then you have a teapot. Right? Sorry, there is a little bit delay, but let's move on to the next screen. And obviously, set for 2, that means you have 2 cups. So you have a pitcher and you have a bowl, which you'll be using it to cool the water down. Also, you can make the tea and then pull it back onto the bowl as a serving bowl. You can use it later. And next one is a tea set for 3. So as you can see, array the cups, 3 cups on your left side. On the center, that you place your teapot pitcher, and onto your right side, that's the one that you have a bowl to cool, your water cool down. Okay. And next one is for the group. So this is the basic tea set. You have a left side cup starting from 1, guest 1, 2, 3, and this is a tea pitcher next one, and then you have a tea bowl, and you have a teaspoon that you can use it to scoop out your tea leaves and pour it into the pitchers. And in front of the tea pitcher, there is a small jar that could be the rest your tea lead. Later on, you can do that. Or if you have a special container that has the tea, then you can keep that tea on the table as well. So this is the teapot. Sorry, going back. So you have a little bit longer handle than any other countries, the teapot, right? So you get to control with this grip. So you need to have a bit of a long. Also, you don't really touch the bottom of it. So you want to use your left hand to control your lead here. And next one is a tea bowl that you're using it to make your water cool down. And this is the jar that you can keep the leaf. And the table and the tray. So the tray on the right top is the one that you're using it to serve the tea, to move your teas away from the table. Whereas the left side, that's the table, which I have a same set here. And the top one is the teaspoon. Usually they're made it of the bamboos, so you can keep the moist out. And next one is the water bowl, and the ones that I don't need and wash after rinsing all the cups, I can use the extra bowl. So to make a tea, you need to have a teapot, large bowl, small bowl, and tea caddy, scoop, stand, and 3 to 6 cups and saucers. So you could have a teacup and placing on top of a saucer, and you'll be serving it to your guest. So I'm going to just read through, but we'll be making the tea together. Oops. So first of all, you need to boil the water and cool it down. So this is the most important one that when you're making green tea. Unlike the black tea or any other color of the tea, the green tea cannot have just boil the hot water because it's going to ruin everything. So you need to make sure that you boil the hot water over the 100 Celsius degree, and then you're going to pour it onto a bowl. Or if you don't have a bowl with you, then you can use just a regular cup, right? Just cool it down. We need to make sure that it's not really steaming hot up, right? So it takes about like 2 or 3 minutes. So pour it onto the bowl and you just wait for like 2 or 3 minutes until it gets like 70 to the 80 Celsius degree. So while you're waiting for the tea, so I'm opening the lid up, placing it down, and pour it a little bit onto the cups that you want to use it. So what I'm doing is I'm just rinsing it. So once you rinse, you have an extra bowl onto your right side and drain it out. And so as your cup too, right? So I had a little bit of a cup. So it's not only the rinsing it, the second purpose of pouring a little bit of water is making your cup warm. You don't want to serve the tea in a very cold cup, right? Okay, so let's move on to the next one. So while you wait for the water cool down, rinse, we did, warm up the tea sets, and then adding the tea into your teapot. So usually when you buy the tea, it comes with this nice container. So please do not throw this one away because you want to keep your tea at the best condition. So if you have an unopened one, you can keep it in the refrigerator. But once you open this, I'm just using the clip. Paper clip here. You could have a special teaspoon, or if you have any other teaspoon at home, use the teaspoon. Two of a teaspoon will be good. This is for like 1 or 2 people. I personally like a little bit of a stronger tea, so I add a bit more, but usually the recommendation from the tea masters, they recommend you 2 grams for 2 people, so for 1 person. And you're adding the 250 milliliter of the water into it. So you just practice a few times and see which one you like. Like, do you like the stronger one or do you like a little bit milder one? You control. There isn't just one way of making teas. So we put the tea into the tea jar. Sorry, I prepared the water a little bit earlier, so it's a bit cooled down. and you're going to pour it into the tea pitcher and closing it. So I don't know whether you can see it from your angle that all my tea bowls and tea pitchers, they're pointing it to the left side. So the lid is going this way, and the pitcher with the open is going this way. So you're lining it up. And in the lid, there is a little bit of a hole because you want to let the steam coming out of the lid. So that's the reason why you have a little bit of a hole. And it takes a patience. So you need to wait at least a minute to have your tea become really fully opened. Your tea leaves being rolled, remember, dried, rolled. So they're really tight like this. So it needs to be opened up so they can bring the flavor as well as the colors.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Ha. That was a really great presentation and tea ceremony. And I really enjoyed it. And I know everyone else did too. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you, everyone. We're now going to proceed onto the gallery tour of contemporary Korean art, which is the next portion of our program today. So a little bit about us. Since our conception, Donghwa Culture Foundation has promoted both traditional and contemporary Korean art to Western societies, bringing many renowned artists to American audiences, such as Lee Yoon-no, Seo Sung-won, and Hamsup, amongst many others. Since 2015, Donghwa Culture Foundation has organized exhibitions of major contemporary Korean artists at the Korea Society Gallery. Most recently, we presented the Korean Media Art Festival in 2019. That was sponsored by the Korea Foundation and presented in collaboration with Harvest Works and the Sylvia Wald and Po Kim Gallery. We're very happy to present the gallery tour today of Paper Contemplations, which is the title of our exhibition and the tour today. I would like to introduce our speakers. We have Robert C. Morgan, who is an artist, scholar, educator, and author. He's very knowledgeable in the history and aesthetics of both Western and Eastern art. He's lectured widely, written literally hundreds of critical essays, published several books, and curated numerous exhibitions. He was appointed Professor Emeritus in Art History at the Rochester Institute of Technology, and in 2005 became Senior Fulbright Scholar in the Republic of Korea. He has worked extensively in China with contemporary ink artists, for whom Morgan has authored many catalogs and monographs. So Dr. Robert C. Morgan is going to speak today, and we're very excited about him joining us today. We'll also have Dr. Hyun, and she has developed her career as a program organizer, lecturer, and researcher in the New York arena. She's taught courses titled Art in Non-Western Societies at Montclair State University, Survey of East Asian Art, and 20th Century Asian Art at Manhattan College. Her interests embrace the intersection between Eastern and Western cultures, thus pursuing a dialogue between contemporary and classical traditions. So Dr. Hyun has been a valued program organizer at Donghwa Culture Foundation for many years, and we're really happy to have her with us today. So I would like to present our two speakers, and thank you for joining us today.
Hi.
Hello.
Is okay? Good afternoon. Welcome to Sylvia Wald Po Kim Art Gallery. I'm going to introduce Korean art in relate to Hanji. Hanji is mulberry paper in English. It's Korean handmade paper, one of the distinct traditions of Korean culture. Here, there are five artworks in this gallery by two artists, Hamseop and Jung Kwang-hee. Behind us, surrounded here, there are four artworks, two works by Hamseop and two works by Jung Kwang-hee. Would you catch the gallery view for our Zoom audience? Uh, uh, I invite a guest speaker for today's gallery tour. He's Professor Robert Morgan. Mia already introduced him. Professor Morgan is a well-known art critic. He has lots of experience with Asian artworks, so I expect he will give us a more authentic and attentive comprehension of these artworks. First, paper is very important material in Asian culture because the paper is a medium for both painting and writing to present humans' intelligence. Hanji, Korean paper, used for cultural or religious purposes, and also ordinary craft works in pre-modern Korean society. However, in the transition to the modern westernized period, Hanji was simply regarded as a kind of legacy of the past. The recent years artists once again paying attention to this high-valued Korean paper. Not only these two artists, as you know, such as Park So-bo, Jung Kwang-young, Kim Min-kyung, they're all very well recognized in the international art world. They all use Korean paper, Hanji. So now I'd like to make a question to Professor Morgan. Why Korean artists are interested in using Hanji as their primary medium material in their artworks, like Han Seop and Jung Kwang-yi?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Soo Chan-hyun for the opportunity to come here and speak. And let me just begin my remarks that Hanji is Korean paper, and it has a certain symbolic meaning, or I should say essence. That if you're involved with Hanji, it's almost like a spiritual, perhaps even a mystical idea, or idea is not quite the word that I'm looking for, but anyway, I believe that Hanji has a body of knowledge that is connected to it, and those who have participated in scholarship in terms of artists who have used Hanji understand that in fact the scholarship that has gone into the use of this paper is extraordinary. And furthermore, I would like to say that in contrast to what we have in the Western world, in Korea, which is in the East, we have something very different. We have the split between the painting and the literary aspect of the paper. In other words, paper is not just paper, particularly in the case of Hanji. Paper has a very definite use and a very different, and each use has a different program attached to it. And I think that's important to remember. I think that when we're talking about Hanji, we're also talking about a direction that we can follow. Something that has existed in history in the past, and something that is still going on, something that is continuing. And I think that that historical context for Hanji is extremely important. And whenever you have a historical context for something, you have a mythological context as well, because the mythological tends to be much more personal in terms of how the paper is used, whereas the historical is much more involving the culture or the group, shall we say. And both of these concerns are important to the artist who is using Hanji paper. So history and mythology are both present in the use of Hanji. And I would say that artists who go that direction, like the artists that we're going to talk about today have a sense of both of these, and they understand that what they are doing is significant. They understand it as having importance, not only for themselves in terms of an expression, but in terms of the culture of which they are a part. That the culture of Korea needs these artists. It needs these artists to bring forth new concepts, new ideas. We're talking about paper now, but paper is very significant, okay? I hesitate to make a comparison between paper in the East and canvas in the West because it's difficult to compare and you really can't compare. But let me just say that Hanji paper can last as long, if not longer, than canvas, which is interesting to think about because in the West we tend to think of paper as fragile, but in fact Hanji is very strong. And it has to do with how it's made from various trees, from the bark of the trees, the inner bark, and it takes a long time for this to come together. And once it comes together, it's a strong phenomenon of materiality, and it's something that can be used both in the realm of the visual, in the painting, and in terms of the literary, in terms of ideas that are significant to the culture in which this work is being made.
Oh, it's good. So there are two artists in this gallery. When you look back to work, one is the Ham-seop's work,
Yeah.
and the other two works by Jung Kwang-il's work.
Right.
When I look at this artist's work, they have a similarity. Their main material is Hanji, but the way to expression of them totally different.
Yes.
So, so I like to ask your impression about the Hanji of this artist's work. But before I make my question, I like to briefly explain about the background of the two artists.
Of course.
So first, Ham-seop, he was born 1942. That means during his education period, he graduated Hongik University. In 1960s, Hongik University is a very famous school, pursued the students to be like abstract painting. As you know, abstract painting is not Korean style painting. That is totally kind of the impression by Western side.
So it's a Western concept.
Yeah, Western concept. So early period, Ham-seop, he followed the kinds of Western side of the painting, abstract painting. But in some period in 1980s, he looked back himself. Why I don't think about my own cultural identity? And then he totally effort to pursue his, how he find his identity. In that point, he found this Hanji. But when I look his work, he doesn't use just the Hanji like the very delicate paper. He used all the process of make the Hanji. The process of the Hanji to making is so many several levels. The process. So the bark tree and then turn to kinds of the very rough, the fibers, and so looks like a gauze texture. So he used the whole different process of the Hanji. But when I look at the Jung Kwang-il's work, he used just to Hanji sheet and then make the several layers and present very delicately the texture of the Hanji. So two artists, how I like to listen. What's your point of view, the critical observation about two artists?
Yes, I think you explained that very well. And the point about the difference between the two artists is important. It suggests that Hanji is not just for one purpose or one principle of thought, okay?
Yeah, of course,
that
yeah,
it's
yes,
very open in terms of how it's used and how it's applied
yes,
in
of
terms
course.
of scholarship. I would say that Humsup is...
Humsup.
Humsups, thank you. Humsup is more of an expressionist in terms of how he uses the paper. He brings in papers from other places, old books, for example, pages from books.
And also dyed Hanji paper, bark of the...
Well, this is true, yes. But the point is that it's not just, by the time he finishes with it, it's not just one paper that he's, it's almost like what Westerners would call collage. But
yeah, total collage,
yeah. Well, I hesitate to use that word because we're talking about an Eastern concept that has a little different kind of energy, a different kind of key, okay? And I think that's very important to realize in terms of how he manipulates these pages from books, for example, old books, that he applies to the paper to give it strength, to give it a kind of expressive content, okay? And I think that Humsup is very interested in that expressive context. He was born in 1942, as you point out, so he is quite a bit older from his colleague, who's Jung Kwon-hee. And Jung Kwon-hee is also got a kind of, shall we say, expressionist point of view, but I think that maybe there is a bit more scholarship there in terms of how he's working with the Hanji. I think it's not quite the same, but it achieves a nice kind of, shall we say, interaction or interrelationship with Humsup. So I think that these two artists are excellent examples of where you can take this Hanji paper and transform it. I think the transformative quality of this paper is extremely important, that it's not just paper, it's not just quiet and inactive, that it's very involved with the creative world and the scholarship, as I mentioned a few times now, that is important to these artists. But they're dealing with it in different ways. Now, I think that we also have to understand that there is an identity factor here, and often in the West, certainly in recent times, we hear a great deal about identity, but I think that when we talk about identity in the East, it has a very different meaning. That it's not just personal, that it's part of, for a better word, the group. Okay? In other words, you're doing this for the culture, okay? And this is important to understand, that the culture is the living body that is directing the artist, in a sense, okay? Where does this, where do the meanings of things collaborate with one another and become something that is going to open up a new possibility for human beings in this particular place and this particular time. I think that, you know, all these questions have an identity that these artists are interested in. So, as I mentioned, it's the group, but also these artists understand themselves as representatives of the group, okay? Not representatives in the political sense so much, but in the cultural sense, that they are magnets of culture that are giving forth their time, their energy, and their prosperity in some cases to something that is going to be transformative, okay? And the transformative impulse that is embedded in the Hanji is something that they're really trying to promote.
Yeah, it's a good point regarding identity.
Yes.
In Korean people, when they are interested in attention about Hanji, that is much connected to cultural identity in the Korean art world.
Yeah. And the idea is very different than how the word identity is used in New York art, for example.
Yeah, okay.
I would say it's almost totally different.
I missed the talk about Chung Kwang's his background. I don't know what's your impression about Chung Kwang's work. When he was young, his parents taught
them calligraphy.
Yeah, taught calligraphy. Also, his major in his college course was calligraphy. I'm sorry, my voice is...
That's correct. And I think that it's very important to understand that, you know, I talked about Hum Sup as being from an expressionist point of view, and I think that it's very important that we separate, in a way, the expressionist point of view from the calligraphy, because they're two very different ideas, and not just methods, but ideas. And I think particularly with the calligraphy, which is going back for many, many dynasties, that we have a point of view. I mean, this in fact, over here, is as much calligraphy as this. And what is interesting is it's not the kind of calligraphy that we would think of in terms of China or Japan, not at all. It's something that is involving the straight line, which is embedded into the surface. And the straight line also has a calligraphic meaning, okay? Now, it's important to know that calligraphy is beautiful writing, okay? This is a kind of general translation of what that word might imply. So we're looking at these straight lines as something that the artist does. They're not taking a ruler to the surface, they're painting straight because of what is inside themselves. In other words, the presence of themselves is within this calligraphy. But at the same time, it's writing, and from an Eastern point of view, originally, the writing was more, well, I'm not going to say more important, but as important as the painting, okay? If you are dealing with the image, you are dealing with the painting. If you're dealing with the writing, you're dealing with calligraphy, which this is a function of calligraphy that is very direct and very open-minded in terms of a way of thinking about the space, the surface space of the paper, okay, the Hanji, okay? So this calligraphy and this Hanji come together as a very powerful force in terms of the Korean intellect, a very powerful force. So anyone that indulges in this kind of interaction with this space and this material and this mystical presence that is in front of them is going to have a very important role in terms of the history and the future of Korea.
Oh, as you see, Hamso, he doesn't use any brush stroke. He doesn't use any color. The whole color is from dyed Hanji.
Right.
Also, the shape of the form in this work, he made by Hanji paper or the dark tree, some kinds of mulberry fibers, not exactly, some part is not exactly paper, except the kinds of people that made paper, the kinds of texture of the fiber is immediately present on the canvas.
Right. This is an addition that has come into his calligraphy, okay?
No, I'm talking about Hamso. So my point of view, the artist, if he has a brush, he has already trained as artist, kind of abstract painting. Right. He can make much promptly. He can make the gesture of the painting, but he cut his skill. That idea is the same with the Zheng Guangyi. Zheng Guangyi was trained a calligrapher, so he has totally well managed how to write the calligraphy. Well, but he reduced his technique. And I think he reduced his technique, hide his technique, wrapped hold the paper, and then accumulated this paper. Hide his energy, and then reduce his energy, revealed the kinds of the not only surface of the painting, much inner energy.
You got to remember, this is Hanji. This is not canvas.
Inner energy bring up to on his canvas. So, my interesting part of both this artist as a Korean, that is kinds of Korean characters. Previously, we have something in our mind or something idea. Some case we can express directly, but some case we need to hold this emotion side and then keep the transmit or kinds of the preserve our emotion, and then make much deeper, and then present another level. We can say transcend another level, then make art. So I think both artists, their way to use the Hanji, the expression is totally different, but
it's not totally different.
Not totally, yeah, yes. But their expression of the Korean deeper tradition or spirits is kinds of, I can find some similarity.
Yeah, I would agree with that, except I would also agree that your description of the calligraphy is also in China and Japan. Okay.
Yeah, same Asian culture. They share the kinds of things.
Therefore, the kind of energy in Korea, of course, is the key. But the kind of energy that is sought in the process of making calligraphy, as we see in these two artists, is that there is this moment. It's difficult to put it in English, but I don't want to say appropriate, but it's a moment that comes to them. It's mystical, I think.
It's a good point.
But at the same time, it's not removed from the body, because the breathing is very, very important in terms of the letting go. Okay, you're letting go with breath, and you're letting go with a kind of instinct, okay, that's telling you to let go.
Thank you. This a little different point of view regarding international art market, or some Korean artists who are recognized in the international art venues. The beginning part I mentioned about that. So why Westerners, they are much interested in the kinds of the artists who much present Korean identity. So Hamsup's case, he's one of the good selling artists, several art fairs internationally. So the Westerners' point of view, what is to see the Korean identity presentation in the artist's work?
Well, you know, I can't tell you what the Western point of view is, because I disagree with so much of what is Western, honestly. And therefore, I lost interest in the Western a number of years ago, honestly. I'm much more interested in what I'm encountering through these combinations of various places in the world, including the Middle East, by the way. I think that Africa, to say the least, I mean, you know, all these places, since I was a young boy, you know, have become realities. And I've been to some of these places, and I want to go to others that I have not been to. But anyway, the point is that I'm not just seeing it as a Westerner, okay? I'm seeing it from my own point of view, okay? That I've developed over time, okay? And I think being an art critic, that's a very difficult word, I think, because there's a question among many as to whether there is any critical dialogue now with art, or culture for that matter. And I think this is very important issue right now. I think that there should be this dialogue, but unfortunately, the media and the commercialization have really taken over, and it's very on a certain level, that is, and it becomes very difficult for the artists to make a statement that is going to get beyond the figurative into the realm of something that is present, omnipresent, in relation to everyday life and how we gain the experience from everyday life that moves us toward what might be considered transcendence, what you were talking about earlier.
Okay.
Okay.
Also, when I look at the artist's work, one thing, interesting part is the diligence of the Korean, the kinds of some diligence of the Korean artist's work required lots of the labor, how they made all these things. The hold the paper,
the labor, yes, I agree with that. Yes,
also,
very much so.
the hold the paper. As you know, Chung Kwang-yeon's work is
Yes.
the kinds of the small triangle shape.
Sure.
Hold it.
Sure.
Even though he doesn't do it by himself, so he hired assistants. Anyway, I don't know.
No, but it's his concept.
Yeah, I think for Hamsup's case, he did by himself. So hold kinds of push some squeeze or paper, wet paper on the canvas, and then clean the brush. So many kinds of the hard working by his hands.
I appreciate you mentioning labor, because that coincides with materiality as well. Okay?
Yeah, it's a very,
Labor and material are extremely necessary when we think about working with Hanji, for example.
So the kinds of the surface, the material, the feeling also, Chung Kwang-yeon's work, sorry, it's not Chung Kwang-yeon's work is also looks like the blind, close the blind window, and that is made by paper.
Well, that's exactly what he thinks about. Well, no, he's talked about that, as well as over here.
So both artists' work very well present tactile senses.
Absolutely. Yes, the tactile.
So this the meeting, because of the Corona situation, we couldn't meet at the gallery with many audience. Just we can make this Zoom meeting. It's a virtual kinds of the environment by the high technology.
True.
But it's still
True.
the tactile sense is very important at humans' quality, sensitivity. So what do you think about the two artists, their direction or their artwork? How give the good impression to the future, our society or virtual environment? Can you talk about it?
Yes, there is no art without tactility, okay? Tactility is the sense of touch, and the mind has to go in to this sense. It's a sense because the mind is present, okay? This is often misunderstood, that the tactile is only the physical touch. It's not only the physical touch, it's also the mind touching, okay? Now, this is a point of view that I have thought about and tried to articulate on a number of occasions, but it's very different than, what would you call the, there's a popular term for the computer. What is that term? Not the tactile, but the virtual.
But yeah, virtual.
The virtual, okay. This separation, I think, in the East, separations are not so important as they are in the West. But I think from a Western point of view, occasionally, you have to indulge in categories in order to make sense of what you're trying to say. And what I'm trying to say with my comment that there is no art without tactility is that it's not just the hand. It's not just the paper, it's not just the labor, but it's the mind, okay? All of this has to somehow be charged in a way that is going to be transformative and is going to be ultimately transcendent, okay? That the transcendence and the transformation cannot exist unless all of these qualities are present, okay? This is, I think, extremely important, particularly if we're dealing with something as purposeful and historical as Hanji, okay? That there's not a lot of extra space around Hanji. It's a very known presence in terms of the culture of Korea. And the people that work with it are part of that known presence.
Thank you for so good points. And now I'm going to open our talk with our audience. So I'd like to make a Q&A.
I just have a more general question about the current and forthcoming generations. Are you optimistic about the future of this art form and the use of Hanji, given the great onslaught of digital technology? Are there sort of current stars and emerging artists who are carrying on this tradition in the current moment?
You know, I have to say honestly that I cannot think that way in relation to Hanji, because it is so embedded in the culture that I mean, we have a couple examples here, obviously, because we needed them in order to introduce Hanji to our audience, and I'm very thankful that we were able to get this work. But to look at it from the point of view of a market, it's impossible for me to think that way. And I'll tell you, you know, it's been impossible for me to think that way for many, many years now. The more I get into the scholarship of, you know, how profound some of this is, the market is irrelevant, totally irrelevant from my point of view.
But I have a little different point of view because the not only market itself, so I mentioned about the several names of the Korean artists who are recognized in the international art markets or some art venues like Park Sobo. So he had a show at the White Gallery in London.
Yes, that's London, yes.
Yeah, and yeah, his main medium also Hanji.
I wrote for his last show there, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, and also I mentioned the name of the Kim Min-kyung. She lives in Italy. Last Armory Show 2020, early March, before Corona situation. When I went to Armory Show, I look around her work. Her work is made by Hanji, but she used the burned Hanji through incense, and then burning kinds of edge of the Hanji or made some kinds of beautiful lines, and very natural line. So she presented the whole work at the Armory Show through Hyundai Gallery. Now these days, her work, I saw some other big international venue, she presents her work. So kinds of this time, market situation, other recognized art venue situation, some case they are going together. So I don't deny the kinds of market situation. Market is kinds of people can easily approach, understand what's going on, the current art situation.
Yeah, that's the problem. They easily can get what's going on, but they get the wrong idea.
Not totally wrong idea.
The wrong idea.
So I don't like totally pushed by artists the market idea, but the market is kind of the way to communication with the artist and audience.
I wish it was, but unfortunately it's not.
Also, the Corona situation, this very difficult time for the artists. They lost many the places to present their artworks, so they rely on virtual space a lot. So like this very simple virtual gallery tour, this is another way to present artist work with the many audience. And then I like to present the Korean identity through the artwork, how artists they pursued, and then how they could communicate with international audience. That's my point of view to prepare this gallery tour.
Good, good.
All right. Thank you guys so much for your participation. And excuse me, that was a wonderful gallery talk, and I appreciate your conversation and input. It's very illuminating. So thank you very much to our instructors. So yeah, that concludes our event. I'd like to thank everyone who participated today. I had a great time, and if you guys would like to receive more information about future events, just make sure to contact me in the comment box and ask for any emails, email information, so you can join our mailing list. So thank you so much for your participation, you guys, and have a wonderful night.